Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the launch of the Montgomery County Housing Market Study. My name is Kelly Bowman, and I'll be one of your hosts today. We're just so thrilled to have you join us. Before we get started, I want to go over a few housekeeping items just to ensure that we all have a very smooth session and make sure everybody's familiar with Zoom. If you experience any technical issues during the webinar, please use the chat function to message the host and panelists directly, and we will assist you as quickly as possible. All participants will be muted during the presentation to ensure the best quality audio. Video is only going to be enabled for panelists. We have also enabled closed captions, and to turn those on, if you'll look in your Zoom toolbar, there's an icon that says CC, and you can click that to show captions. We have also enabled translation services, so you can choose to enable translation captions and choose one of the preferred language options shown in the drop-down box. As you heard earlier, this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be shared with all registered participants after the event. Supplementary resources will also be made available to you today after today's presentation. So we've also enabled both the chat and the Q&A features. So during this presentation, if you have any questions, I want you to type those into the Q&A box, and we'll address as many of those questions as we can at the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Feel free to use the chat for any general comments or discussion with other attendees. So again, welcome to the live launch of the Montgomery County Housing Market Study. My name is Kelly Bowman, Executive Director and co-founder of Project Beacon, Texas. The Montgomery County study is one of 11 studies completed or in progress nationwide and the first in Texas. I learned about this initiative from Desiree and Maureen, who you'll hear from later, while attending the Global Leadership Symposium at First Place, Arizona, where a major focus of that symposium was on housing and community development for adults with autism and other neurodiversities. I knew right away after seeing the results from the Denver and Phoenix studies at the time that because we want to see bountiful options for housing and community support here in Montgomery County, that this would be the first step in that journey. The first step would be to conduct a study right here at home so that we can understand the needs and preferences from as many parents, caregivers, and self-advocates as possible. This study is designed to provide comprehensive insights into the current housing landscape of our vibrant community. The study aims to analyze key trends, identify challenges, and uncover opportunities to better meet the housing needs of our residents with autism and/or intellectual disabilities. We believe this study will serve as a vital resource for stakeholders, policymakers, and community members to make informed decisions and foster a thriving, inclusive community. I want to thank County Judge Mark Keogh, Judge Wayne Mack, and Evan Roberson from Tri-County Behavioral Health Care for their invaluable support and partnership in this endeavor. This comprehensive study would not have been possible without Tri-County's collaboration. Together, we are building a brighter future for our community. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Evan Roberson, Executive Director of Tri-County Behavioral Health Care. Evan?
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to be a part of this today. It's very exciting, and I'm really excited about what we're going to learn through this process. So, when you think about housing, it's more than just a roof over your head. It's the foundation for really a stable and fulfilled life. If you think about it, a secure, supported housing environment provides, well, really for all of us, a sense of safety and belonging. It's a place where you get to kick your shoes off and grab a snack and sit in the recliner and watch TV or maybe the birds and wildlife out your window. It's a place where we develop routines, consistent, predictable environments, reduce anxiety, and help us all to thrive. Having stable, supportive housing is crucial for overall well-being and development. For individuals with autism and intellectual disabilities, this stability is even more critical. Furthermore, proper housing ensures persons with autism or intellectual disabilities are able to access personalized support services, fostering connections and reducing the risk of isolation, ensures continuity in their care, promoting better health outcomes and enhancing their quality of life. Whether it's tailored healthcare, occupational therapy, educational programs, having a stable home base makes it easier to deliver those services effectively. This in turn promotes greater independence and greater self-sufficiency. By prioritizing housing for these individuals, we affirm their right to live with dignity and respect, inclusion, and it provides them opportunities for personal growth. Moreover, supported housing reduces the risk of isolation and neglect and ensures that individuals are not only housed, but a part of a caring network that monitors their well-being and responds to their needs both promptly and appropriately. This comprehensive support system is essential for physical and mental health. So to sum it all up, housing for individuals with autism and intellectual disabilities is a cornerstone of their well-being. It provides stability, access to crucial services, community integration, protection against isolation. By prioritizing and investing in appropriate housing solutions, we affirm the dignity and potential of these individuals, ensuring that they can lead meaningful lives. So I'm proud to be affiliated based on behalf of Tri-County Behavioral Health Care with Project Beacon as they embark on this effort to understand the housing needs for persons with autism and intellectual disabilities in Montgomery County and to develop plans for housing in our community. So thank you for this opportunity on behalf of Tri-County to participate today, and I look forward to what we learn. Now I'm going to pass it off to our researchers.
Thank you, Evan. My name is Desiree Kamika Galloway, and I'm an advisor to the First Place Global Leadership Institute Make Wave Center for Community Development. I am so excited to be here and to be presenting this information to you today. Your community has all of the ingredients to create stellar housing and support options. We need your feedback so that we can document what people actually need and want. We're excited to get things started, and I'm going to hand it off to Maureen Casey.
Thank you, Desiree. And Evan, this is an exciting time for us to share with you some items. We're going to walk through and describe for you different options that are available to you. I am the Chief Impact Officer at First Place Global Leadership Institute, and I'm excited that you are part of our family of communities that are looking at what are the needs and what are the preferences of autistic adults and those with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families. Our agenda for today is shown on the slide here. We're going to describe what a market analysis for a data-driven solution looks like. Then we're going to talk about some statistics for Montgomery County and residential options that exist for you today. We're also going to share with you a neuro-inclusive housing framework, some examples of neuro-inclusive housing features. We'll open it up for questions and answers, and then a needs and preferences survey. So what does that mean? A market analysis for a data-driven solutions. What we're going to do today is educate the neurodiverse community about options for housing and community development. Only after we describe different options, we're going to give you benefits and considerations of each of those options. Only after we go through that, we're going to show you examples. Then we're going to assess your needs and preferences. So it's really important for you to sit back, have a piece of paper in front of you, and get ready to mark down for yourself. What do you like? What have we described that you really like and you want or prefer? And what do you need? And then what are you like, that's not for me. Remember that this is for us to think about the future. So no one's moving out today, no one's moving out tomorrow, but this is to think about what kind of housing and communities do we want to develop. Only after we assess your needs and preferences will we take that data and approach the housing industry with your consumer data. We're going to share that with local leaders. We're going to describe this process to them. We're going to share the data. We're going to describe and segment the data. So we'll talk about folks that have high support needs or high behavioral health needs. We'll talk about folks that have lower support needs or perhaps mobility needs. And we'll talk about everybody as a collective group and discuss what are the preferences, what are the needs, and then have those local leaders identify what are the recommendations for how we can increase housing stock that meets the local needs of the Montgomery County. So I'm going to share a little video so that you can get a sense of what that means.
Maureen, we're not hearing the video.
All right. Let me stop it and start it. And I seem not to be completely turned on. So I can't turn on my video, but let's see. Can you hear it now?
We receive messages like this one every day to help people better understand their options. We defined over 150 residential terms and showcased real-life examples in the groundbreaking A Place in the World Housing Guide.
I'm going to turn it over to Desiree to describe some of the data we've found about Montgomery County.
So right now, this population is often invisible as an affordable housing need. From the data we could find, there's about 705,000 individuals in Texas who have an intellectual and developmental disability, 43 times the capacity of the Cynthia Woods Mitchell Pavilion. There are only 2,164 vouchers, which I'll describe in a moment, to make housing affordable, targeting people with disabilities. Only 400 of those vouchers are targeted in the Montgomery County area from your public housing authority. When we look at the statistics, 19% of family caregivers are over the age of 60. That's about 134,000 residents with IDD that are living with a senior caregiver. Where are they going to live? What could they afford? How are they going to access the supports? So we started looking into what does it mean for somebody to afford housing? If an individual relies on SSI, they're going to need rent at about $283 a month. If it's someone who's able to work full-time at minimum wage, then their rent needs to be set at about $377 a month in order to be deemed affordable, right? Because they need money for food and clothes, medications, and other things. Right now, the fair market rent that's in Montgomery County is over $1,100 a month for a one-bedroom and over $1,300 a month if you're going to be splitting a two-bedroom. Clearly, this is out of reach for a lot of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. When we start looking at what does that break down into hours, even with competitive integrated employment, that would mean 120 hours a week. Someone with AIDD would have to work at minimum wage in order to afford housing. In order to be able to afford renting and sharing an apartment, they would need to make a minimum of $13 an hour working full-time or work 72 hours a week at minimum wage. This is completely out of reach for this population. So why aren't there affordable housing options? Well, we have to think about the evolution of residential supports. And before 1980, people with disabilities were forced to live in institutions in order to get support. It was only until 1980 that group homes became an option. And that was very innovative at the time. Over time, advocates said, we really don't want our landlord to also be our service provider. We want different ways to access services. And so Medicaid at the federal level started to innovate and create other ways in which you can access services. And we're going to be going over some of those later on in this presentation. And so now that Medicaid has innovated in a way to be able to offer choices in how people access services beyond just the group home setting, it's time that housing starts to adapt to the needs of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Hence, it's so important that we have more and more people watching this presentation and taking the survey at the end. When we're looking at who with AIDD is living outside of the family home, it's only about 8% of the population. Most individuals are still living in group homes. About 13,000 are living in a host home, and only 3,400 are living in their own home. Remember, 134,000 are living with a caregiver over the age of 60. Something has to be done urgently in order to prevent the displacement and homelessness of this population. But we don't want that solution to just be putting together programs that people have to fit into. We want them to be person-centered, meaning an individual with a disability is able to have choices and decide what's best for them, access individualized supports in the way that they need, be able to look for volunteer employment opportunities, recreate with those that they want to recreate with, and feel as if they have that supportive and stable community all around them. We want more person-centered solutions. Again, another reason why we're coming to you is to understand what it is that you want, and to have that data to describe solutions for the future. As you saw in the video, there's a great guide called the A Place in the World Housing Guide. And we're using some of that language. So we're not going to use Texas terms today because this is a collection of studies from all across the country. We're going to be using this common language that was created by researchers who put together the A Place in the World report. Today, we're going to ask you about what are your preferences in terms of how services and housing are connected. We're going to talk about financial options for housing, in which ways people can access those long-term support services. We're going to talk and show you some videos of different types of housing developments, and then as well as what could be built into new opportunities, both physical and supportive amenities. That QR code takes you to the A Place in the World guide. If you're interested in learning more, the guide has a lot of different examples that we won't be able to go over, but certainly lots of information in addition to what we're going to be able to present with you today. So to start, how are services and housing connected? Well, in a provider-controlled setting, one's housing and services are inextricably connected. Meaning you may find a provider that you really like. They have identified housing. They're going to sublease to you and provide you with your services. They're going to take care of the management of the housing. They're going to make sure that housing is safe and taken care of. But if you no longer like that service provider, or that service provider can no longer meet your needs, you're going to have to move, because it is a provider-controlled setting. Alternatively, there's consumer-controlled settings where your housing and your services are completely disconnected, meaning you get to choose the housing that you want to live in, and then you get to also choose your service provider and how you want services delivered to you. In some respects, it gives you a lot more choice and control because you get to stay in your home and change providers as needed. But that also means there's an additional layer of potential responsibility because you're going to be responsible for maintaining your stable housing. It is really important that people recognize that you will always have to pay for housing. Just because you have Medicaid-funded waiver services, unless you live in an institutional setting, you will have to pay for housing. You can choose to rent or own. In terms of renting, you could rent at fair market rent. If you can afford $1,100 a month for rent, you can find an apartment or a townhome in your community, move in, access your services, and there we go. For those who need rental assistance, there are two ways our country makes housing affordable. The first way is through those vouchers that I talked about. If you are lucky enough to access one of those 400 vouchers, you could use that voucher to subsidize your rent, meaning you would find a landlord who says, yes, I will accept your voucher. Your landlord would have a check to them given to them from your public housing authority, and you would pay 30% of your income. Alternatively, another way that housing is made affordable in our country is by subsidizing developers. And so there are housing developments in which certain units are intentionally have lower rent, and that's because the developer was subsidized. You can also rent a room in a provider-controlled setting, like a group home. If possible, you may choose or decide to own your own home. That could mean that your family bequeaths the family home to their loved one who has an intellectual and developmental disability. Oftentimes that asset is held in a trust to protect the individual, but maybe the family, mom and dad, are going to move out and their loved one is going to stay there and have a couple of roommates move in. You can also add an accessory dwelling unit or a tiny home on a family or friend's property. It gives you just enough privacy, right? Your own door, your own space, yet help is right there as you need it, or maybe you just want to head over for dinner. This could also be a way for some families to be able to have an additional income stream or natural support system. If they're able to add an ADU on their property, then they may move on and pass on, and they could rent that home to somebody else that maybe offers natural supports, or their loved one can move into the family home, and then that ADU could be used for another person to offer natural supports. Of course, if you have the capacity, you could purchase a home for your loved one with AIDD, or a person with AIDD can try and purchase a home on their own, or even consider purchasing a home with others. So maybe there's 3 people that own a share of a home in the community. We're going to watch a video that is from a LARSH community. LARSH communities are provider controlled. It's important that we share what a provider-controlled setting could look like. The residents who live there all pay rent. They use a shared model for service delivery.
What's this, gal? Do you remember that one?
How do I describe Fritz? Fritz
Look at
is an
Look at
extrovert.
this one, Fred.
He loves people.
There you are on a boat.
He loves going places and doing things.
Oh, yeah. Paddling. That was great.
But most of all, Fritz loves his birthday.
L'Arche is a community of faith where we welcome people with and without intellectual disabilities. It's a place where we call each other brother and sister. Celebrations are at the heart of our journey together, that we all should and need to be celebrated. And in doing so, we recognize the gift that a person brings to community.
Well executed.
Fritz celebrates life and he celebrates us. So this is just a very special day to honor and celebrate him.
The party's tomorrow and there's still a lot to do.
Someone's assigned to organize the celebration.
I'll go first and I'll point to you. You go second.
Lori and Brooke are going to be making the cake.
Happy birthday to Fritz!
And Hazel and Caitlin are going to prepare the card.
We should get some bracelets. Yeah. We'll draw him with some bracelets on.
Dave and Bruce are going off to buy Fritz's gift, which is some flowers.
Going in.
It really is these small parts that then contribute to this bigger picture. large communities all over the world honor the unique and sacred value of every person. It's a liturgy, it's part of our community, and really intentionally doing that by spending the time thinking about what that person loves, thinking about what that person brings to our home. And
so that was one way of having neuro-inclusive housing. We're now going to talk about some other ways that we can use a neuro-inclusive housing framework to provide housing. So we think about this framework in three ways: the individual residential services or your chosen provider, your housing, the bricks and mortar that Desiree just described, and then finally the supportive amenities or safety net. So when we think about those individual residential services in your chosen provider, that's really important. As Desiree described, you could have those combined in a provider controlled with your housing, or separate if you're doing consumer controlled. So how can people with autism and intellectual and developmental disabilities access their long-term services and supports? We're going to describe a few ways that you can access these delivery models. These may not be models that are available in Texas. They are models available across the country. And we want to expose you to these different models so that you can think about what are the things that you think you need or that you would prefer, even if they're not necessarily available in Texas. And again, we're going to describe the model and give you some benefits and considerations. So the first model is called remote support. This is using technology to support an individual. It can include a dedicated computer tablet with camera, live video support, scheduled video calls, programmed reminders, alarms, or notifications. The benefits of this is that you can have that help without having another individual in your own home. It doesn't matter if someone calls in sick because it's really easy to replace them with another virtual assistant. This might increase the sense of independence, but in-person help could be deployed as needed. The considerations are you might not feel supported enough. Some people may prefer or need in-person support. It could feel isolating or not empowering. Another way to receive your long-term services and supports is to use an agency-based rotational model. This is one where you select the agency, and then the agency has a number of staff that are rotating. The agency recruits, trains, and schedules the staff for your needs. You might have lots of people with whom to share stories, interests, and build relationships. If someone calls in sick, the agency is responsible to replace from their pool of people. The consideration for this one is there may be too many new people, and that could be overwhelming. You're less involved in the selection and scheduling of the staff. So you might choose instead to go with a self-directed support model. In this, your support is still divided into shifts, which may be covered by one more than one person, but you are choosing. You as the adult, as the family members, you're choosing who's going to be that support. You're hiring, you're training, you're setting the wage, and you're firing staff if that has to happen. Staff could be recruited from friends or family, or someone who you've placed an ad and interviewed them. So the benefits for self-directed are you get to choose exactly who you want to support you, including your own family members or neighbors, and what they get paid. All the training, the boundaries and the rules are controlled by the person that's being supported and their family. The considerations are that recruiting and scheduling staff takes time and effort. If staff cancels or don't show up, you're responsible for finding that fill-in last minute. Another option is shared living. So you may be more familiar with a host home. We're going to talk about that in a second. But in shared living, you are inviting a person or a family to live in your home, and then paying them to provide support This is a consumer-controlled option, and the adult with the AIDD is the lease or mortgage holder. The benefits are that some people prefer having the same person support them throughout their day and week. That same person could go with you to a healthcare appointment and provide follow through with support like getting your prescriptions from the pharmacy, making follow up phone calls to schedule other appointments without having to do any phone tag or talk to other people. It may be more intimate, more family like of a household. The consideration is living with one support person may be too intimate for some people. So another option is a host home. The difference with this is a provider controlled approach where that adult with autism or intellectual or developmental disability lives in the provider's home with the provider. Again, this might provide a more family-like support with shared meals and community activities. Same benefit as the shared living in that some people prefer having the same consistent person to support them, the same person to go to healthcare appointments, and it may be more family-like. So you have the same benefits. The considerations are slightly different in that moving into someone else's home might not feel like your home. And if there's a change in the ability for that family to serve as the host home, then the person with intellectual or developmental disability is going to have to move. Another option is a paid neighbor. So, in a paid neighbor approach, this is somebody who lives next door in the same apartment complex, a couple of doors down, and is getting paid to check in regularly on that adult with autism or intellectual developmental disability, and provide the consistent support but on a more drop-in basis. The benefits are that you have a safety net that's close by for overnight emergencies. You have access to someone who's really nearby when you need someone outside of your own home. They could take you to appointments, support you. The considerations for this one is it might not offer enough support. And sometimes a paid neighbor is supporting multiple residents, so they may not always be available right away, or they might have their own issues and things. So let's take a look at a video and hear from a woman who is serving as a paid neighbor to some autistic adults.
And how has living here impacted you personally?
Me personally, oh my gosh, I wouldn't live anyplace else. I always joke around here, if there's, my next apartment's gonna be over there at St. Francis Cemetery because I'm not leaving here. It's, the people here are awesome. It's a small community. We are a little bit cloistered, but that's okay. We take care of one another, and that's a good thing.
And last question, what advice would you give someone else that's considering being a supportive neighbor or living in something similar to 29 Palms?
You're in for the treat of your life. It's an awesome program. The mix that they've put together, whoever did this, did a good job. As someone that's a senior, I wouldn't live anywhere else, and being a supportive neighbor, I don't listen to my arteries harden. I've got these young adults in my life that bring a lot to the table for me personally.
And how? Thanks, Maureen, for teaching us about the different ways in which people can access services. There's a lot of different ways, right? Sometimes those aren't always shared, or you haven't had access or exposure to them. So that's super exciting. I'm going to talk about housing. Now, remember, your housing and your services don't necessarily have to be connected. So you can choose the housing that you prefer, and then the service delivery model that you would like. Within the housing world, there is a lot of diversity. And so we're going to talk about property type and development type. The property type is what the actual unit looks like. Is it a small, tiny home or accessory dwelling? Would you be interested in a small cottage or patio home? So maybe only one bedroom, a little bit smaller. Maybe you have a front porch and a back porch. Could be part of a duplex or a triplex. An apartment or condominium, so multiple floors, likely having an elevator. A townhome, so no elevator, but also multiple floors. And then a single family home, so just a freestanding single family home. So those property types can then be placed into development types. Scattered site means that it's just part of the typical housing stock. So maybe you want to live in an apartment that is in a scattered site apartment building. And so you would just have an apartment in the apartment building. Or scattered site means you would choose a single family home in the middle of a typical neighborhood. There are also now neuro-inclusive planned communities, which means that a housing community is created in order to be accessible to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. It does not necessarily mean that it is provider controlled. It could certainly be consumer controlled, meaning you choose your preferred Medicaid funded service provider. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's just people with disabilities. It means that it was designed to be accessible to people with disabilities, and that maybe other people without disabilities also live there. In a neuro-inclusive mixed-use development, it's similar to a neuro-inclusive planned community, but it also incorporates some common areas that are open to the public. So maybe there's a retail shop, like a coffee shop, or maybe there's a pool or a dog park that others can use. So it has a little bit more retail commercial space that is available to the public, whereas a planned community is only residential. In neuro-inclusive planned communities and mixed-use communities, typically there is a property management company that will make sure that the lawn is being mowed, and that if there is a plumbing issue, they'll be able to fix that. So there's property management on site. This is a little different when it comes to a co-housing community. In a co-housing community, a group of people decide to build their own neighborhood, and not just build what they want, but also manage it. So instead of hiring a property management company, they're going to share some of those tours of management. They're going to talk about what are the extra activities that they're going to host. Whereas in a neuro-inclusive planned community or a mixed-use development, they may have someone else organize life skills classes or planned activities. In order to show you some examples of how service delivery models and property types and development types can be kind of mixed and mingled, I'm going to give you a few examples. The first one is CAS housing. CAS housing is in scattered site. So they find an empty lot in a typical neighborhood and they build a house. And this house is very interesting because on one side is like a typical single family home, but there's 3 attached accessory dwelling units connected to it. So when you walk into the front door, on the left side is a single family home, but on the right side, there are these 3 ADUs. The individuals who live in the ADUs are individuals who have an intellectual and developmental disability. It is a consumer-controlled setting, so they get to choose their service provider and any of their Medicaid-funded waiver supports. But across that doorway in that single-family home are what they called stewards, or a resident assistant, a paid neighbor. That paid neighbor is just there as a safety net, and once a week, they invite the young men who live in the 3 ADUs to come over for dinner. And so in a way, it's like a built-in support system. CAS Housing is a not-for-profit, and they create housing options in this type of model. They also have CAS Gardens, which are these container gardens that they use as a social enterprise as well that can be placed on the property. Kind of interesting. And some of the physical amenities that they've chosen are to have adaptable design. So as people age in place, they're able to add a grab bar and things are already zero entry just in case there's some mobility differences. And then they also built in some sensory friendly features into the property. So to deal with some of the sounds, when the cabinets close, they close very slowly. They don't just slam shut. And then there's a lot of natural light at Cass Housing. We also wanted to share with you what a co-housing community might look like. So North Street neighborhood is a co-housing community. In the middle of Durham, there was this multiple blocks of kind of housing that was really dilapidated. And so a housing developer partnered with a group of families and said, hey, I will renovate each of the homes to however you like. And so each of the single family homes were either maintained as a single family home or created into a townhome, or created into a split level. So there were multiple apartments in each of these homes. Different families own some of the homes, as well as different organizations. So there's a few not-for-profits that are part of the neighborhood who also own a home and provide support. One of them is called a friendship house, where it's shared living, very similar to L'Arche. In their neighborhood, it's the community members that are deciding on when they're going to do a potluck dinner together, or when they're going to, organize a trip to the ball game. They're also the ones who are managing the properties. There's no fencing or anything. They have a community garden. But what they found is that by creating some of these small amenities within their neighborhood that they created, that neighbors outside of North Street neighborhood are also coming in and wanting to engage in, a quick round of basketball or working in the community garden alongside them. We're going to watch a video of a planned community. This planned community is located in Texas. It's called 29 Acres. And 29 Acres is a planned community of single family homes located just outside of Dallas. It is consumer controlled, so residents get to choose their preferred provider. And it supports the broad range of individuals with support needs. And so we're going to take a look at this video and learn more about John and his home at 29 Acres.
Leaders across the country are pioneering a new marketplace of supportive housing options, recognizing that one first leads to the next. John shares a single-family home with 3 housemates in a planned community at 29 Acres. Being pedestrian-oriented, he is no longer isolated in a home, as his neighborhood is free of through traffic. John enjoys many physical amenities designed to be cognitively accessible and sensory friendly, like giant swings, walking paths, and common spaces for karaoke or special interest classes. He has moved from one-to-one support to sharing staff.
John is 24 and has minimal language. He likes to stay busy. He likes to do lots of different things. And he also has a history of life-threatening elopement. He has run into highways before. So he really does require 24/7 oversight to enjoy the success that he's had. For him, a scattered group home in a typical neighborhood would be very isolating because the doors would be locked or there would be a big fence around it. So I think this kind of setting is somewhat of a safety net. And I also think it's more social for him.
29 Acres serves the full spectrum of neurodiversity. So each person really has their own individual life plan, their own pathway, and then their own individual support services and then goals within the community.
Or do you want to add something else?
When somebody gets to choose their life and make their choices, that's their reinforcement. So it really helps their overall quality of life.
John and other people who are on the spectrum want to live happy, full lives, just like us. They just need a little extra support.
Just because you have different setbacks in your life, that doesn't mean that you can't be successful. John is ready to work every day and takes that task away from me where I can really just focus on front desk tasks.
There is always something that he can do to help. And we love to help him and he helps us too. So it's a way to incorporate people with disabilities to help the activities in the community.
John has thrived in the last couple of years. He has 2 part-time jobs. His unsafe problem behavior of elopement has significantly decreased. He is able to participate and actively engage. He is really finding his place in the world.
A place in the world is the universal language to research, develop, and achieve supportive housing solutions. Download the A Place in the World Housing Market Guide at aplaceintheworld.org. This video is a production of the First Place Global Leadership Institute with generous support from the Make Waves Family Foundation.
So whether or not you decide to live in a neuro-inclusive neighborhood or a co-housing community, there are physical amenities that make life a little bit more accessible and easier for some people. We are going to ask you in the survey about a bunch of different options because we want to know what can we advocate for to help people make their homes more accessible. The first thing that I wanted to go over, because some of these aren't necessarily, maybe you haven't heard of them before, is universal design. So universal design means that not just an individual unit is ADA accessible, but that the entire property is designed to meet the needs of somebody who uses a wheelchair or mobility device. In the bottom right-hand corner, you'll notice that the young woman is entering the pool with a lift. That has made the pool accessible, but that is not universal design. Universal design is the picture just above that has the ramp that goes into the pool. So everybody uses the same pathway to enter the pool together. Adaptable design is the next one that we're going to talk about. And that's really age-in-place features. So maybe you don't use a wheelchair now, but you want to be able to age in your home. So there might be studs that are in the ceiling or in parts of the wall so that when that time comes and you're using a mobility device, that your home is essentially ready for it and you won't have to change your home because it's not accessible. Pedestrian-oriented design means that the houses are all organized based on people who walk, pedestrians, or roll, that it is not designed for cars. So many of our neighborhoods, right? You drive down a street, you turn into your garage, you close your garage, and you never see your neighbors. In pedestrian-oriented design, front doors are facing common shared spaces so that you have these soft social interactions with your neighbors. This is also very helpful for people who might have elopement or can't recognize vehicular danger because they'll be able to walk around their community and not be worried about getting hit by a car, that the setting is oriented for pedestrians, not for vehicles. Smart home features are another physical amenity that can be built into different housing options. Smart home features, well, I'm not going to talk about a lot about them because we have a great video of Rusty, who lives in Colorado in his own home, and it shows how he uses smart home features throughout his day.
Things to do. Plug in your computer. Turn off the coffee pot. Turn off the lights. Take Rita for her morning walk.
Welcome home, Rusty. Your apartment is secure. You have new email from Cindy.
Got your message, Rusty. Yeah, I'd love to come over tomorrow night. Make something good. I'll be hungry.
I don't know why I'm gonna fish for Cindy.
Safety alert. The stove is on.
What? I got a phone call.
Sis is calling. Touch.
Hi, sis.
Hi, Rusty. I just sent you the shopping list on your mobile.
Thank you. I'm on my way to the store.
This is not your stop. Don't get off the bus. This is not your stop. Don't get off the bus. Okay, it's time to signal your stop. Okay, it's time to signal your stop.
I got $40 for my checking account, please.
Voice fingerprint match successful. Transaction approved.
So as you see, Rusty's using a lot of technology to support him to live independently. And so that's known as smart technology. Now we're going to talk about some supportive amenities, or what we like to call the safety net or secret sauce. So these are amenities that a community could add to support adults with neurodevelopmental disabilities. These are not things that Medicaid or Medicaid waiver may pay for currently, but these are things that, as we think about a community, we can build into that community. And there's lots of different options that might help you or your loved one to live more independently. One thing could be benefits counseling. So having staff that assist residents and their families to navigate government programs, as well as privately funded programs. Staff might help residents to understand how employment and other life decisions could impact their benefits, but they don't offer any legal or financial advice or case management. But they may help people to connect with public benefits like food stamps or help with utilities. Another type of supportive amenity is a community navigator. So this is staff that's on site who might facilitate that community integration and opportunities to develop relationships in the surrounding area. So think about that like when you go on a trip and you're staying at a hotel and you want to learn, is there a show nearby? Is there a museum? What are the things I can do in my community? So we can have communities that have community navigators that can offer in-person or an on-site assistance to help people to connect to and navigate the larger community. Next, we're going to watch a video about Jenny and learn about the supportive amenities that she experiences at First Place Phoenix.
My name is Jenny Leibowitz. I've been here for a year. I get to cook my own food and live out on my own. It's been a challenge, but exciting. Not having to rely on parents for everything.
I knew this was a place for Jenny. It answered all my questions and all my dreams. She participates in the activities here. She feels very comfortable and very welcome. She doesn't feel out of place.
I get to make friends, and I get to do things with people, and I'm not alone. Well, I usually like to do what's around the schedule. Thirsty Thursdays, Finally Fridays, Wellness Wednesdays. I'm trying to make more friends and I'm planning parties.
She feels at home. It's pretty incredible.
So as Jenny shared some of the things that she really appreciated with First Place in that first year was the ability to just plug into community life activities. So to have activities that were already scheduled that she didn't have to think about. Another supportive amenity that people may want or need are life skills training. So, this is when your property has staff or courses, specific courses that help residents to learn and practice daily activities to promote independence. This could be around transit navigation, cooking, financial management, social skills. These life skill classes can also work on dating, social relationships, things like that. In addition, so some communities might also have post-secondary transition programs. So with life skills training, community life, that would be something that anybody who's living in the community could access. A post-secondary transition program is a program that's specifically designed for folks to come and stay for a shorter amount of time. So maybe they're going to be there for 1 or 2 years and learn those skills and then move out to another community. Now let's take a look at a post-secondary transition program that's operating in Texas.
A lot of families come here because the support stops after high school. There's nowhere for these students to go, no programs that really push them to independent living. And so we like to say that the Transition Academy is a 2-year runway to independent living. So if one student is more focused on career, then we can help them down a vocational path. If they really want to focus on their social skills, then we can help them with socializing. So it really gets to be driven by the student and the family's goals for that student.
Independence is living on your own and functioning on your own, making sure my room is clean, contributing to society, so working every day.
Well, I learned one thing. Adulting is hard. Because when I think of myself, I'm like I'm like Pan 2.0. Peter Pan, as in never want to grow up, be a kid for life. That kind of person. So having to do the work myself was pretty tough at first.
The curriculum has the 2 components, a career readiness, which focuses on a lot of those job skills, networking, how to write a resume, a cover letter, how to behave at work, what the etiquette looks like, how we interact with our bosses, active listening. And then we have an independent living skills section, which is more of the how to cook, how to take care of yourself, how to live on your own, how to balance a budget, how to comparison shop, all of those different pieces that are part of your everyday life.
It's really, really cool to get them in the home environment because that's also how we generalize their skills from the classroom. So they'll go to UNT and learn for a couple hours, and from there, a lot of programs, they go home and they don't get to follow up and see how those skills are being, used in the home. But here, with our staff here and with it being small ratios, we really get to focus on those skills, have them practice, make sure they've mastered the skills, and then it's still a home environment, so they've got their friends living here with them too, and it just works out really well.
Whenever I might feel down, it's always nice to have that to uplift me, and I can uplift others.
I want them to learn to be independent and do things for themselves. Like, I'm there to support you, your staff is there to support you, but we want you to practice in an environment where we can guide, but ultimately for you to be able to do all of those things on your own when you live on your own. So to make that transition from having support to being an adult.
Getting to see them become more comfortable with who they are, more accepting and gracious with themselves is a really cool piece. But also just, things that they couldn't do before, like laundry, cooking. Some of these guys couldn't do that stuff when they started. And so to see them now, like we'll come in on a Friday and they're making breakfast, or they start their laundry when they wake up at 7 without someone having to tell them. Just those little steps have been really, really cool and part of my favorite things to see.
So now's the exciting part. We are going to, our next part is to help you to complete the surveys. So in addition to this session, which we call our expanded educational session, we have already pre-recorded a plain language session, and that will be put up on the Project Beacon website that you see there on the left. So for folks who need a plain language option, we have that. We also have a plain language visual guide. However, if you don't need the plain language visual guide, you can read on your own, you can make decisions on your own. We would love you to complete, we need you to complete the expanded language session because that section is much more robust and will allow us to get better data about what people in Montgomery County who are autistic or have intellectual or developmental disabilities or their families and caregivers want and need in housing and community development for the county. So Desiree's going to put the link into the chat. You could also take out your phone and access the survey here by getting that QR code and going to the survey. We want you to do that now so that you have these ideas that we've just shared with you fresh in your mind. You know what the benefits and the considerations of the different bricks and mortar, the long-term support services, and the supportive amenities. And then you can share with us information about yourself, your diagnosis, and what you need and want from housing. We're very excited to share this. We can't wait to get the data back. And we're going to stop the recording now so that we can open it up for you to do some question and answer.
If you happen to be a family caregiver who has 2 loved ones with an intellectual and developmental disability, please fill out the survey twice for each individual as they are different and will have different needs. We will also need you to share. I will put the link to the landing page for the housing market analysis in Montgomery County